Section 7.1, Ratio and Proportion. Objectives: write and simplify ratios, use proportions to solve problems. Vocabulary: you can pause to read. I am moving on to the next slide. Here's the definition of ratio. A ratio compares two numbers by division. You saw this in pre-algebra. The ratio of two numbers a and b can be written as a to b, a colon b, or a over b. And we're using the fraction symbol. And of course, we cannot have b equals 0, otherwise you have undefined. And here are some examples that you can read. Just remember this. And moving on to the next slide. Just a note, follow along. A ratio can involve more than two numbers. For the rectangle, the ratio of the side lengths may be written as follows. 3 colon 7 colons 3 colon 7. Number 1 says the ratio of the side lengths of a triangle is 4 colon 7 colon 5, and its perimeter is 96 centimeters. What is the length of the shortest side? Notice that this is the most common mistake that I get, that students make. 4 plus 7 plus 5 equal 96. This makes no sense whatsoever, because if you take the sum of these three numbers, it's not equal to 96. So what you need to do is you need to set up an equation, but it doesn't look like this. This is the equation that you need to set up. Since you're talking about a ratio, it's 4 times some sort of common factor, 7 times that same common factor, and 5 times that common factor. So this is the equation that you have. You see it there. Apply some algebra. You get x equals 6. What is the length of the shortest side? So you multiply 4 times the shortest side, which is 4x, which gives you 24 centimeters. Here's number 2. It says the ratio of the angle measures in a triangle is 1 colon 6 colon 13. What is the measure of each angle? Excuse me. Same idea. It's a factor. The common factor is x, so it's x plus 6x plus 13x equals 180. A little bit of algebra, and we're not done. It says what is the measure of each angle? So you have to go back and find all three angles. You should see where I get 954 and 117. And again, if you add these three angles, then you get 180. If you don't, you know you made a mistake. Next slide. You learned this in Algebra 1. It says you learned the cross product property, the product of the extremes, which is a times d, equals the product of the means, b times c. And this is where this comes from. This is what you call the, these are the extremes, and these are the means. So if you take this product of the extremes, the product of the means, they are equal. And given that b and d are not equal to 0 because you have undefined. This illustrates what I just said as well. Next slide. Properties of proportions. You probably saw this in pre-algebra. If you didn't, now you know. But notice that you have a over b equals c over d. You know this is true because of the cross product property that you saw on the previous slide. But notice what happened. You can get the reciprocal of this, b over a, and that's what I have. But you want it to be equal to the right-hand side, so then you need to get the reciprocal of this as well. How do they get this? Instead of going a over b, now you can go a over c, and that's what they have here. And then you need to follow b over d, and that's how you end up with this. And this illustrates why it is true. Moving on to the next slide. This is practice solving proportions. So for number 3, you need to solve. So you're going to take the product of the extremes. I'm not going to actually take the product, and you'll see why in just a second. Take the product of the means. And then at this point, this is what I'm going to do. This is why I did not take the product, because I know that 56 is 7 times 8. And then at this point, I know that if I divide both sides by 7 and 8, I end up with x equals 9. And that is my answer. Here's number 4. Product of the extremes is the following. Product of the means is the following. You have to FOIL here. And then at this point, I'm going to take away 100 from both sides. I get negative 84. And then at this point, I apply my factoring techniques that I learned in Algebra 1. I use the zero product property. So I let this first factor equal 0, second factor equal to 0, solve for z, and these are my 2 answers for z. Let's go to number 5. So here's 5. What I did is I rewrote this the following way. I used one of those properties of proportions. So I went x over 3 and then 56 over 8. Why did I do this? Because I can rewrite, I can do something with this fraction here. 56 over 7 is the same thing as 7 over 1. Once I apply my the product of the means and the extremes, set them equal to each other, I end up with x equals 21. Let's go to number 6. Notice that at this point, I rewrote this proportion the following way: 2y over 8 2y over 8 equals 9 over 4y. Why did I do that? Because I can do something with this 2 and this 8. I get the following. Once I simplify, I take the cross product. I end up with this, divide both sides by 4. And then at this point, I take the square root of both sides. That's how I end up with y equals positive negative 3. Number 7, cross product, I get the following. And then at this point, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. You can do this like the problem that you saw on the previous slide, in which you have to FOIL. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this problem the following way. I want you to think of a number that once you square, you get 36. And actually, it's not just a number, it's numbers. That when you square them, you get 36. And you should be thinking of positive and negative 6. So the inside could equal positive negative 6. What is the inside? This is the inside. So then you have the following. X plus 3 equals one of the signs, which is positive 6, and then you do the same. X plus 3 equals the other number, which is negative 6, and then at this point you solve and you end up with this as your answer. And this concludes the video.